decks in this tournament than I was expecting.
And funny you should bring that up because we were just talking about how Zhou probably in a vacuum could still be a good deck, but just because Control Warlock is so powerful, you can't just make that class do anything else.
Yeah.
And so we're actually going to start up with the Tempo Rogue for Virtual here, and was this Druid for JasonZhou?
This is indeed the Jade Druid from JasonZhou. It's an interesting matchup to get things going for Virtual. I don't think these are exactly the cards he's going to be looking for. I like getting rid of all of these cards because from a first point of view, maybe you're thinking, great, one drop on turn one is a great way to start the tempo and pushing the damage. But against the Druid, it's not pushing that much damage. You don't need to fight back against anything in the early game, and it's weak against Plague. So looking for those slightly more impactful cards like Edwin, Kelesith, and maybe Captain as well is a lot more impactful in this matchup.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And this is the funny thing that happens when sometimes you don't have Wild Growth on 2, but you're not too sad about it because at least your opponent has given you some free minion to eat up with the hero power. Still, though, I don't expect to see anything but a coin captain from Virtual here, especially backed up by having drawn that second one.
Yeah, this is truly absurd. If a Wild Growth had come down here, it would probably somehow have been worse for JasonZhou, even though he could have got up to the swipe even quicker. But even now, the captain being able to come down and make a truly ridiculous board in terms of power level means there's also fantastic follow-up with, you know, if a backstab is drawn, Elven Minstrel, and if not, just Tar Creeper on its own is perfectly good.
Yep, and JasonZhou there, thankfully for him picking up some ramp, which means he can activate the Nourish for ramp, but already down to below 20 health.
And maybe because of that, we're looking at a Jade Behemoth on this turn, because while it doesn't trade all too well against this board, it at the very least gets a swipe in the place where it can start clearing off some of these minions on the board. But at the same time, that's looking at what is on the board right now. And on the following turn, maybe if something like a Chain Gang or a Tar Creeper comes down for Virtual, JasonZhou won't even be able to clear the board.
Right, so I think he respects those minions enough to not play out the Behemoth there, and maybe he's trying to save the Innervate for something different. And also, I just failed to mention that Innervate is not something we see very often in Jade Druid.
It's a very interesting inclusion indeed. I'm trying to find if he's got one or two.
He's got two, actually.
Two of them in his deck, okay.
And one Plague.
Which, I mean, I guess it kind of lowers the overall value of his deck a fair amount, but I suppose still it is Jade Druid, so there's infinite value in the deck. But the thing is, it just means that you are very often going to be getting some truly awful draws. However, after the Ultimate Infestation comes down, if you can go innovate into Mark of the Lotus as well, it can be truly disgusting. But he's not even running that in addition to it, which makes it a very interesting inclusion to me.
Yeah, especially without Auctioneer or something like that, although that has become obsolete anyway. Well, this turn is looking pretty Behemoth-like to me, just because the 3/6 challenges a lot of the minions pretty well, but the Jades are at, what, 1-1 right now?
Yeah.
Seems pretty awful. Then again, playing Malfurion, what are those 1/5s challenging? They're essentially just eating up damage.
They're not doing much, but the upgraded hero power is pretty nice, to be honest, just over the next few turns, and I think that's why he's going to end up going for it. Could look at Spiders as well, because he is going to have to play fast and loose with his health total if he wants to be coming back in this game. But it is at the same time very weak to SI7 Agent Backstab. There's still another deckhand, so I do prefer going for the taunts here because it's probably going to end up doing about the same amount of damage anyway.
Right, great pickup for Virtual here. Not that deckhand plus Minstrel is a bad turn, but it's slightly weaker to Plague. So just being able to put down, I'd say one of the most anti-Plague cards there is, which is Cobalt Scalebeam. Just the stat line allows it to take down those spiders, and it buffs up one of its friends to take down another one as well. Beetle, my bad.
Right. But looking at this turn now, you were looking, and I was tempted to agree with you on going for the Jade Behemoth last turn. Looking at it now, do you think that would have ended up slightly better for JasonZhou if he hadn't used his mana to just play out the Malfurion for a couple of Scarabs?
Yeah, I think so, because having the Innervate in hand might have been able to activate more stuff with Branching Paths later on, but although he did gain the armor anyway, so the Spellstone is active as well, the curve still seems alright, but there's just not enough there that can actually swing the board like how JasonZhou needs, and I think the only thing that can do that effectively is Shredding Plague at this position.
Yeah, I think you're right. JasonZhou, while he does have the ability to fit in a hero power now that he has upgraded it, and it is pretty strong, he doesn't really have the mana, because spending 2 mana for 3 damage whilst also taking more damage in the meanwhile is pretty weak, and that is why he's going to be going for the Branching Paths, hoping to find basically exactly Spreading Plague. And I think while you did, I think I agree with you, it was not the correct play on the previous turn. With this line of play, it has allowed him to find the Spreading Plague, which is his out.
having the hero power online also just allows him to start chipping away at things. Well, not quite a Bone Mare turn yet, but I'm liking Keleseth plus Elven Minstrel for the instant payout of the extra +2/+2 stats between the two of them.
Very nice indeed. Spine Slayer is great to take out something like a Behemoth. The Bone Mare very likely to come down on the following turn means it's going to have to be, as you keep saying, Spreading Plague coming down in the next 1 or 2 turns if there's going to be any chance for JasonZhou to pull this back.
Right, and it's looking quite grim here, and I'm really surprised how many players have been either cutting 1 plague or 2 plagues from their druids, but I guess that's having in mind that you're bringing druid for a very specific reason, and it's to beat, I guess, warlock or priest, which are decks that plague doesn't get much done anyway, but it's such a huge punish when you're running into anything aggressive because druid relies so heavily on that card to be able to get to their power turns like ultimate infestation.
I mean, we saw that earlier in the first series of the day when Kuanet just could not get a win with his plagueless quest druid. And here for JasonZhou, while he does, I believe, have double copy in his deck, or only one actually,
yeah,
so
one.
it would only be a one-off copy that he's going for. He just doesn't have the out for it.
Yeah, and even if he drew it, I think it would be too little too late here. So Virtual going to take a very quick game. Maybe it'll take another... No, it's done next turn. So.
Yeah.
Or he can rest. Great.
I think there were a couple of things from JasonZhou that we could disagree with. Going for Malfurion in the end worked out pretty well because he upgraded his Spellstone to get a very nice tempo swing for 6 damage on 1 mana. But even on the second to last turn, when he had the ability to go innovate into Wild Growth as opposed to the hero power, that does then give him the ability for top deck Ultimate Infestation to be able to start wrestling things back. And he was in so bad of a spot that he needed to start finding cards like that.
Yeah, and I also think it's really just a deck building choice that really hurt JasonZhou here. Of course, the Rogue is not the kind of thing he was hoping to run into with this Druid, and maybe just one of those decks that, looking at his lineup, you should say, like, all right, I need to take this loss and just get it out of the way. But yeah, Plague is just too strong. Even post-nerf, that's the moral of the story, I'd say.
Yeah, of course it is. And against... Well, I suppose maybe if you were theorizing what the meta of this tournament would look like, you would maybe be forgiven for assuming that it wouldn't be that good. But given how it's shaped out, how popular Paladin is, how popular Hunter to an extent is, as well as Rogue, it's, you're very much expecting to have a lot of value out of the Plague. And for JasonZhou, while he won't have too much against the rest of the decks for Virtual, he's still likely to be able to get a win with his Druid, but it was not looking good for him at all there.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that he could expect a loss to that Rogue at some point because he is running Paladin,
Fair
which
enough.
loses to Backstab just as a card.
Done. That's the game over.
Yeah, and that Druid would have lost to a Rogue at some point as well. Now he can start queuing up that Druid to get a matchup that it would be way more comfortable in, such as, well, Priest is what we're going to see.
Right.
Although... yeah, it's me and Lorinda that are quite sold on J Druid still being favored, but maybe with this lineup from JasonZhou, it's not quite so favored compared to the build that Firebat and Purple were bringing, which contains Bone Mares and Quarter Creepers.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, the Spellstone probably isn't going to be too valuable here. The Spreading Plague not going to be too good either, and Harrison Jones obviously has no target, so there's a few whiff cards in here that really just won't be getting the job done. However, Double Plague, Jade Spirit, Jade Behemoth are not whiffs by any stretch of the imagination.
Sure, yeah. It's the Innervates that really, I feel, will hurt JasonZhou in this matchup. And although it's a good hand of Jades, lots of green cards for JasonZhou, Virtual has hit that Cleric early on, so he's going to be able to find some extra draws at some point. But I totally agree with his Acolyte over doing something so slow as to just trade in the Cleric.
Yeah.
Spellbreaker's an insane pickup, though.
It's managing to find value here, which, to be honest, is often not going to be doing against the Priest. The targets you want to be silencing, it's like Lyra, Loot Hoarder, and Acolyte. Most of them are already in hand or would have come down soon for Virtual. So for JasonZhou, getting that value on curve is a really nice way to make sure he's denying the draw for his opponent, which he does need to do incredibly aggressively. He needs to be making sure there's very little draw coming in for his opponent.
Great. So there's a lot of different ways to navigate this curve from JasonZhou here. Playing the Blossom means that Malfurion will be active the next turn, so it looks like that's what he's going to go for. Following Malfurion, he can actually Jade Behemoth and Idol. Yeah, green cards, they work out. This looks like definitely how many Jade Druid versus Priest games go, which is the Jade Druid puts out its first wave of minions that are still within range of dying to Dragonfire Potion.
Yeah.
Once the priest gets that out of the way, they have to hope that the immediate refill isn't there.
Yeah.
And conversely, the druid has to hope that they have drawn Ultimate Infestation by that point, because if they miss one turn of development, that gives the priest a lot of time to play out stuff that the druid has to react to, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what we're looking for here, or JasonZhou is looking for, is going for the Nourish or the Ultimate Infestation as soon as possible, because as you said, his first wave is almost perfect. He's got an incredible amount of Jades. He just want Aya to top it out for the maximum amount of pressure. But to really close it out, he is going to need that extra bit of card draw to make sure he can scale into the late game after something like a Psychic Scream or Anduin comes down to clear things up.
And I actually really like the Spider pick here. Of course, you can say it's weak to Potion of Madness / Spirit Lash and something like that, or Pyro, but I don't think you can put the Priest on having kept that kind of card, and the 1/5s really just have no game against Priest of the Feast.
Yeah, exactly. It's obviously got a small downside, but the upside is incredibly large, and it's going to be coming into effect here for JasonZhou. It doesn't look like there's any way that Virtual can destroy these spiders, obviously without going for Dragonfire Potion and just completely eviscerating his own board in the process.
Yeah, I actually like a Lyra turn here. What do you think? Like Lyra, Silence, and Binding Heal. You can give up your Priest of the Feast, but you stick a Lyra, get 2 spells, and it's quite terrifying. But this, of course, preserves the Priest of the Feast on board. But I don't know, I kind of like having Lyra sneak in there where it's not so easy to deal with and maybe just be a complete headache for the Druid.
I kind of like your thinking, because even though the hero power has been upgraded for the Druid, so only a Wrath would be needed or a Spellstone to take it out, that does mean that it's just mana being used not on something like Aya or Innovate UI, something stupid like that. And it would probably end up dying, but it could have worked out pretty well there for Virtual. I like your line of thinking.
Yeah. The downside of that would have been like using Binding Heal for nothing seems a bit iffy. So the Akanite is a higher value play, but this might give JasonZhou the window to start developing really quickly. Now, what is the best way of doing that? It's just a 6-1, isn't it? Yeah. Are we innovating a hero power as well? Don't think it's worth it.
Well, in terms of what the Innovate can actually do, it's not that valuable, to be honest. Obviously, as you said, no Gadgets and no Mark of the Lotuses in the deck to go Innovate Lotus after a UI. So in terms of what you can actually do here with the hero power, it's arguably one of the best times to throw it down.
Yeah, I think the only thing I could do is like help activate UI if it's a top deck, but you're not going to play into like drawing the UI. It's 2 and 20.
And you've got a perfectly good turn next turn anyway, even without the UI.
So JasonZhou actually chose to go for armor with the hero power there, if I'm not mistaken, which is very interesting to me. I've heard of this in a lot of different casts recently, where Jade Druid now, although people say it's worse against Priest because of Psychic Scream and things like that, they now have this alternative path of, that's pun intended, branching paths to get more armor, and of course playing down the Malfurion as soon as possible to just start armoring up out of range, where a Valen Mind Blast full combo turn just doesn't do it.
It can. I have been beaten that way as the Raza Priest. It can definitely work out, but it is relying, I would argue, a little bit too hard on Raza or Anduin being right at the bottom of the deck, because if it comes down on curve, even without the Raza, just Anduin alone will be chipping away too much damage, I think, over the course of the game. So it's worth thinking about for JasonZhou, but I think, in my opinion, clearing off a few more minions on the board was probably a bit more valuable there.
So this branching path definitely has to come down for draw in this case.
Yeah.
Jades will now be at 5/5, which is very respectable, and that's about the perfect time to pull the trigger on Dragonfire Potion. I said something about draw, I take it back. Now I like Jade Spirit branching paths for attack. Might even be twice just to get that double the trade onto the Priest of the Feast, but I guess Jason wants to hold back at least one Jade card in respect of Dragonfire Potion.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing here, is that Vandal probably isn't going to be getting that much value in this matchup, to be honest. So using it now just for the body and for a bit of extra armor as well feels fine. Baiting out the potion, which means next turn UI is really nice, and then the follow-up of Jades will be really powerful.
Right. If JasonZhou sees a Dragonfire Potion here, he will be ecstatic. I think that would be such an awful potion, but I don't really know if Virtual is meant to play it out here. Sure, Fandral is scary, but it is a really, really valuable board clear, and without Anduin to follow up, not too sold on that. Of course, the alternative was what? Lyra Spirit Lash. He did have a Lyra Radiant Spirit Lash turn, though.
He
plus
did.
Binding Heal.
I don't think you really want to be going for Lyra going into turn 10, though, or 10 mana, I should say, because of Ultimate Infestation. As you said it's unlikely that you're going to draw one. He actually drew two, one after the other, as he still has one left in hand as well. So a really powerful turn here for JasonZhou, and he can just dump his hand as quickly as he possibly can because there's no worry whatsoever of him running out of stuff to do now.
Right, and this is Virtual's kind of... well, the only play, to be honest, but I'm not sure what he is hoping for from the Lyra to kind of bail him out of this one.
Infinite Holy Smites.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even less likely than the Glyph Kabbalist Home Dream.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, if he was going to do that, you should probably just go and buy a lottery ticket instead. But in this particular instance, it's not going to be working out all too well for Virtual. It still has the ability for Lyra just to be killed off, and with little draw to back things up, it's looking like JasonZhou is just going to be running away with his Jades.
Right, Virtual just hasn't hit too much of his cycle, nor the power mid-game cards like Kazakus and Raza. So I think JasonZhou can just run pretty much wild with his Jades. Of course, he will have Anduin in mind, and getting rid of Lyra is #1 priority. So are we going to see a swipe here, I suppose? Swipe Jade, Spirit, and Hero Power seems pretty decent to me.
That seems decent. Could even go for swipe with the Jasper Spellstone to take out everything.
It's very clean. The Spellstone does 6 now, right? Or
I believe it only does the 4 damage because it would be greater Jasper Spellstone if it was fully. It's annoying because golden cards, they look pretty magical already.
Yeah.
You think it should be doing the full damage. But yeah, this is a perfectly good way to clear up the board, even going with the Innovate, because you can now possibly just set up for UI on the very following turn.
Yeah. This is going to be armor if he's sticking with his original game plan.
What do you know?
Continuity. Amazing.
But yeah, for Virtual here, there's just not really anything doing at the moment. Devour Mind is going to have to find something pretty impactful indeed.
Couldn't have even gotten UI because both of them have been drawn.
Never lucky.
Unlucky, yeah. So it's really just the dig for Anduin game plan here.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, Wild Growth plus Thalnos seems like the play for this turn. It isn't a very fun one, but it's all he's got.
Yeah, and you got to take what you're given. 15 cards in, no Raza, Kazakus, or Anduin. It's getting a little bit unfortunate at this point, but we've seen our fair few share of games that have got them way too early so far today, so it's kind of nice to see Raza Priest not doing what it's supposed to do for once.
So JasonZhou just going to go full on no respect for Anduin. I think he's had a pretty decent read that it wasn't there last turn. Wow, actually just going full for armor. Interesting.
Big time.
49 health for this druid.
Do you like this line of play now? Because it kind of looked to me like he didn't have to... I mean, if he goes for there, he can go for UI on the following turn. So I do see his reasoning, because you do want to cycle through your deck as quick as you can. But could have saved it for the plus attack, maybe for a surprise lethal. Could have even just saved it for draw later on down the line to make sure if it gets to the later stages of the game, he's shuffling his Jade Idols and playing them super quickly. But it's going to work out just fine for him here.
Yeah, I think JasonZhou recognized that even if Anduin were to come down that turn, he would be at such a high health total that he was still free to play UI, even though it's kind of a slow turn. And if it didn't come down and say it were Psychic Stream, well, UI is still amazing. And just being at such a high health this far into Virtual's deck, maybe it's at that point where you said you kind of need to rely on Raza and Anduin being at the bottom. Maybe this is that exact situation.
It could be, but I think for JasonZhou, the armoring up plan here has worked out pretty well for him, because like I was saying, if you're not hitting your perfect UI on curve, things like that, then the armoring up plan, the game might just go on for ages, so you do need to rely on it being the bottom there. But for JasonZhou, he's going to be winning in 2 turns' time probably anyway, because of the crazy amount of Jade development he can go for in the next couple of turns. And he's still got like another Nourish in the deck, or in hand, sorry, so he can start cycling his Jade Idols really quickly.
Yeah, I think the way that this has turned out, Virtual needs to hope for Anduin in exactly either the next draw or the one off of the Power Rid Shield. Otherwise, the window just closes way too quickly. Now, if Anduin does come down, can he even get there? With, I guess, Swipe is some extra damage. It doesn't fit with Valen, though, so...
Yeah. I just don't think it's quite there, because he's going to have to be spending all his resources on clearing the board, as long as JasonZhou makes sure he keeps up his card draw and can keep throwing down Jade after Jade every single turn.
It's going to be Wrath for draw on the Aya, I think, because you are relying on drawing Anduin as a win condition. So in that world where you could possibly win, you got to get rid of whatever comes out of the Aya.
Yeah, you got 2 draws at it by going for attacking in with the Thalnos now, which you should definitely go for to give him the chance of finding the Anduin, because it's starting to look a bit better now, actually. With Prophet Velen in hand already, Power Word Shield to get you another 4 damage ping once that comes down. He could be in with a shot if he finds it right now, and he actually manages to get it. Okay, we kind of actually have a game on our hands now.
I am hyped now. This was actually the one window he had slightly under 10% chance of drawing it, but this could be very interesting now. So JasonZhou now has the go signal to go for whatever refill, but the thing is, it's only 1 Jade that he has for refill. And the deck was also filled with some inefficient Jades that were not Battle Cry Jades. You just play a 6/6 for 6 or whatever it was. But, ooh, Jason actually going for not playing the Jade Spirit here. I am not sure about that.
I think it's the respect play for Psychic Scream having been found, because the first one was off of a Shadow Visions, so there's still that 1 extra in the deck, which would be pretty devastating, to be honest, if the second Jade Spirit did come down and everything was shuffled back into the deck. Whereas with this line of play, if it forces a Psychic Scream now, on the following turn, he doesn't need to spend his mana just drawing. He can throw down the Jade Spirit, and it means there's still no opportunity for Virtual to play the Velen because there's just too much pressure.
Sure, and Jason also really wants to be fitting in that extra 3 armor every turn because he's been so consistent with the game plan. And I think he actually truly believes he can get there this way. And is Virtual going for the Valen now?
He can go for 2 extra damage on everything with the Spirit Lash. He's maybe thinking about just trying to clear and keep the Velen on the board. I think that's a pretty unlikely scenario to arise, though, to be honest.
Yeah, it just takes 1 swipe and a hero power, right?
Yeah.
So Valen is the win condition here. So I prefer this Galactic hero power play. Just don't know if it even gets there without having seen second branching paths yet. So of course, Valen, Mind Blast, Holy Smite, we know that's the Magic 28. He has played Radiant already, right? With the Lyra.
Yes.
So, and Binding Heal. So yeah, I really don't think the burst damage could go beyond 32 max.
Yep.
So if JasonZhou can stay above that total at any given point in the game, then he should be feeling good.
Yeah, I think he will be feeling very good indeed. And he just needs to make sure there's no ability to clear off his 1 or 2 powerful minions on the board each turn, because say, for example, Psychic Scream comes down, there's no mana for Velen, and he needs to make sure that no matter what, he has minions on board to fight back against Velen.
Okay. So can Kazakus for 10 actually do something here?
I mean, you need to be careful you're not just dying on this turn, though. However,
yeah, true. Your opponent does have 21 on board.
Yeah. But maybe it's going to be looking at... I mean, Kazakus Potion for 1 isn't even that good because you can't fit it in addition to the Holy Smite, which you kind of need to be drawing if you want to kill your opponent anytime soon anyway.
That's why I was thinking it had to be 10, but then again, that's also just delaying the inevitable. If you go for like the mass polymorph thing, it's your whole turn. You only fit in, an extra ping, which the Druid can almost completely outpace with their own hero power.
Yeah, you're just dead after then anyway. As the option picked up here was 4 to everything and a freeze to 2, so he can just stall what's going on here. He's now bringing his opponent down to reasonable health totals. Yeah, still just very high above the starting
40,
amount.
My bad. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Even after the ping, so that's... Yeah, JasonZhou is well above the threshold where you need to be scared.
It's true. Have any of the 0 mana spells been used so far this game? I believe Circle of Healing still in the deck, and possibly still Silence as well, if that's in there. Which seems pretty unanimous at this point. So, you know, if those cards are picked up, there is the start of something impressive coming down for Virtual in terms of damage.
Sure, but I really don't think there's enough time for it, because if he had to have lethal, it would have to be this turn, and it's just not happening no matter what he draws.
It's true. If there was Psychic Scream right now, he could delay for a turn, but then JasonZhou can just play a Jade, play Branching Paths, and get out of range of anything that could possibly happen.
Right. It's gotten to that point where Virtual would have needed to draw at least 2 cards at once to have a chance. Yeah. And there's nothing that fits with... because Virtual... Psychic Scream is way too expensive to be able to play any significant burn along with it. Every play that Virtual could make to delay the inevitable is... just it. It's just delaying. There's no way to actually get over the line.
He would somehow need Frost over there to be able to go in combination with the Prophet Velen there to be able to start to fight back against what's going on here.
Imagine that Valen Nova. It's almost as sick as Tony Nova.
But for JasonZhou here, although I was critical at the start of his hero powering plan so early, and I still think he might have started a bit too early on, the overarching game plan I think has been spot on from JasonZhou. He's realized he's in a good enough spot where he's never really going to be losing board control from here on in. So he just needs to make sure he's not dying to insane amounts of burst damage, and I think he has locked that down pretty well in this instance.
Yeah, and this game might have just, not changed other people's minds, but it's made me feel good for saying that Jade Druid is still favored against Priest. And a while ago I said that maybe Firebat and Purple's build would be more favored, having like Bone Mares and Carter Creepers as consistent threats. But now you can kind of take this very Control Warrior-esque approach to it, which I love to see from JasonZhou. It seems like he's maybe found a way to resurrect that type of deck in this meta.
He's such a Control Warrior player that even when Control Warrior isn't viable, he'll play it in Druid anyway.
Yeah.
That's true dedication.
Yeah, I wonder if this kind of approach to the matchup works really even more consistently than the Firebat build. Because honestly, I myself have not played enough of this deck, and I don't see this kind of build on ladder very much either.
I mean, it seems to me that both lines of play are going to be fairly weak to Anduin on turn 8, because if you're going for Bone Mare to buff everything up to a bunch of damage, it dies to Anduin. And if you're going for the super armor out of range approach, all of a sudden Velen will just not be able to deal. Velen and Anduin will not be able to deal enough damage unless it comes down on turn 8.
What a welcome sight to see the Priest draw everything they could possibly hope to draw, and still have it not be enough.
Isn't that a beautiful sight indeed? Yeah. Virtual thinking, is there any way I can just survive on this turn? And yes, there probably is, given that most of the burst damage has come down from JasonZhou. But actually, with double branching paths, I'm not even sure if there is in combination with the hero power.
Yeah, he can't even clear all of the big minions here. Big, including the 6/6. He can clear the 10/1 and the 11/9, but it involves a smite going into the 11/9, which pretty much is conceding anyway.
Yep. Your win condition has then completely disappeared because
evaporated.
It's Jade Druid. There's still the Jade Idols to come in and infinitely cycle. There's still a stupid amount of draw available for JasonZhou with the Nourishes as well. And this is all but Ogre.
Ogre?
Yeah.
All right.
No, it's not Ogre till it's Ogre.
So Virtual, okay. I was gonna say he's actually found some way to survive that next turn, but I mean, thankfully, blissfully realizes it will just be something that is just carrying this on way past the point where it's helping anyone. So
I liked his line of play though. He found the one window where maybe he had a chance in that matchup by going for the Anduin, getting it at just the right time. On turn 8 would have been just the right time, but
actually,
just about getting it there in time to give him a chance. But the strategy from JasonZhou, the very defensive line of play coming out great there, especially in combination with his almost perfect starting hand, ramping up quickly with a bunch of Jades into the UI, is nigh on unbeatable.
And the inclusion of Innervate maybe makes me think that this is really meant to be a controlled Jade version, which is Innervate in the sense that it helps against aggro matchups so much. It's not controlling in the sense that it's greedy and trying to take down other greedy decks, but JasonZhou has recognized with this build that Priest, when it doesn't get that perfect draw, can be fatigued. And you even see that sometimes with in slow Warlock matchups back in the day, or even against Zoo. Sometimes the Gul'dan can just outpace the Anduin, or at least heal up enough so that the Anduin hero power just isn't enough. Because if you look at it 1-to-1, 3 is greater than 2, and so when Anduin doesn't have cards, you will be healing up more than the Priest can deal damage.
I learned so much when casting with you, like the value of numbers between 2 and 3.
I have been told that before, sadly enough.
But yeah, for JasonZhou, he's going to be carrying on with some of his other decks. It's nice to get that one out of the way, but I feel like he was in a decent spot to get a win with the Druid, because as you said, it's obviously fairly decent against Priest still, and it's got really good game against the aggressive decks as well, even though it's only got the one Spreading Plague. But now a matchup that we were talking about in some of the previous series, which is still very much up for debate as for who is ahead in this matchup.
Right, and I think that keep from JasonZhou there of Divine Favor is very telling that he knows just how this matchup is about to play. who was it a while ago that said that, well, if you're Paladin, the priest has to deal with your 30 cards with their 15 cards because they cannot play around Divine Favor very well.
Yeah, I believe that was Neil talking to Zorkler about it, and it's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, because even just a case of example of Firebat playing this deck earlier, he never left himself vulnerable to the Divine Spirit. He had very few cards in hand for the whole game and still got down to about 4 or 5 cards left in his deck. So you can have the ability to both deny what the Paladin's trying to do whilst also keeping your hand size fairly low, especially when from Virtual we see some of the best removal combos against against the Paladin already available. Spirit Lash here is fantastic. Follow up with Organized Soul Priest, Circle of Healing to deal with that Call to Arms, is perfect at every step along the way.
Right, and I do like the Spirit Lash here to deny any sort of buff. Of course, it is weak to Call to Arms, so maybe you can go for this line of play if you're expecting Call to Arms to have a really impactful Organized Soul Priest turn. At the same time, the Blessing of Kings is still... the minion still dies to Organized Circle, so this might be the kind of greedy play that we need to see from the Priest to make sure that those 15 really stretch out to deal with the 30.
I guess the thing is, with this line of play, you're saying, I still have decent game against Blessing of Kings, because you can either go with Organized Circle or Spirit Lash. The thing is, with this thinking, you are now left without a Tar Creeper, because if you'd gone for the Spirit Lash on the previous turn, you would have then been able to go Organized Circle to clear out the Call to Arms, if it were even there.
Wow.
So positive and negatives of both play, but Virtual is left in a fantastic spot now as he picks out Raza on curve, still with a very healthy hand to boot.
So JasonZhou here, I don't think he can afford to be dealing with this Raza. Purifier Maul, is that the Divine Shield one? Okay, now that he's drawn that, maybe it makes more sense to trade in like a buffed Cleric with the Direwolf and then re-equip the Maul and use that to finish off the Raza. Then you can have Divine Shield and everything again.
Yeah, this is a weird play, because to be honest, I was looking at Direwolf on this turn in combination with the Purifier's Maul. Then you can kill it off, bring everything back up into Divine Shield range.
Big Worm is definitely better, I think.
You reckon?
Yeah,
Getting
yeah.
it out
no,
now?
no, this is so good against Dragonfire.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, he simply just trades 1 extra damage away for having a Worm playable instead of a Direwolf, which I think is very good recognition that he needs to be putting out these decent-sized threats before Anduin can come down.
Good point. Yeah. Very good point. I guess I was thinking, if you keep it back, then you are less vulnerable to Dragonfire Push, because then you can follow up with the Creeper, but if it has Divine Shield anyway, it can't die to it in the first place.
Especially having seen Spirit Lash and easy ways of dealing with bubbles already used. Anyway, this is looking like a pretty fun Steward of Darkshire turn. Deckhand Hero Power as well. Or you could just play out everything to make sure that Divine Favor will be doing a lot of work next turn.
I think that's a fair line of play. It's, however, kind of telegraphing to your opponent that you do have the Divine Favor, because not going for Hero Power there is a little bit sketchy, but JasonZhou going for it right now so that there is no potential for his opponent to dump his hand.
Right. This might be in respect of something like Psychic Scream as well. You don't want to be getting all those minions put back into your deck before you can draw into things you actually want, which is like second Call to Arms and so on.
Man, these Divine Shields are just absolutely destroying the potential for Organized Circle. There's just nothing that Virtual can really do against it. He can clear off half of this board at best, or I suppose most of it if he wants to use the Holy Smite, but that's a lot of resources he's just throwing down the drain, which could be met with potentially another Call to Arms, a Valinir, things like this, which can really fight back very effectively.
Yeah, I'm thinking this turn might actually be Lyra Holy Smite, just to put down something on board. Holy Smite isn't getting that much better in the matchup, although Organized Circle will get better for sure. The thing is, I'm not sure if you smite off the exposed Direwolf or remove a bubble so that the circle gets better next turn.
I think it's a bit too obvious if you're going for the getting rid of the bubble, because then all of a sudden your opponent doesn't really play anything. They just keep getting the chip damage and making sure that you never get value out of it. But that is probably the best single spell that could have been gotten there for Virtual.
I am floored. It has to be the other Maulin to plus attack the player on that. And if you're JasonZhou, you're not thinking that's the pick off of that one Lyra spell.
Exactly. Truly absurd in terms of power. But even outside of that, the fact that the Divine Shields of a few of these minions are going to be picked off means that Organized Soul Priest Circle of Healing will finally be able to get the value it needs, especially as the vast majority of minions with Divine Shield have already been taken care of.
So with this buff onto the
Reporting for duty.
the Argent Squire instead of the Argent Protector, it actually makes one more thing survive to Shadow Word Horror.
That's a good point.
So I don't know if JasonZhou is actively thinking about that. Probably just because it trades nicely. But it's a small upside.
It's a nice little way that it works out for him, and he somehow managed to play surprisingly well against the Shadow Word Horror, because though obviously it does a really nice job here of clearing up the vast majority of what's going on, there is still stuff left around for JasonZhou.
So Virtual has the option to go for a full clear, but involves using 3 cards and basically his last reliable way of getting rid of minions. So if Call to Arms or Other Such Refill were to come down, that's it for Virtual's clean removal. So I'd actually just like to see a Shadow Word Horror here, and it's too late now though. He's played the Akunai, so we know what he's going to go for.
Well, he's definitely going for Circle of Healing with this line of play.
Yeah.
But maybe he thinks it's worth leaving the rest of the minions up. He's basically trading it for a few Divine Shields to be gotten rid of.
Maybe this is in respect of a second Divine Favor.
That's a good point too. And I suppose second Call to Arms, second Divine Favor, they're both equally likely, and both are pretty bad for you, to be honest. But with this line of play, there's only actually 3 minions left.
I always get baited by that as well because of the Knife Juggler animation delay, but that is a very clean snipe there and getting some decent extra damage in as well. So this has to be an auctioneer turn.
Yeah, easy peasy. Don't even think about this one. What you silence is slightly
it's gotta be a juggler,
more
right?
difficult, you reckon?
Yeah.
I suppose you don't really have any more board clears left for this mana that you could then get rid of the Righteous Protector with. But
Silencing
Potion
the
of Madness.
Protector, I guess it's better against Blessing of Kings, but I don't know. I feel like the Juggler will definitely put out extra damage, whereas that Divine Shield doesn't necessarily make things cleaner for JasonZhou.
I think you're probably right. Even just the hero power alone dealing 2 damage each turn with the Knife Jugglers is actually really scary indeed.
So Virtual, that's definitely what he's thinking about, because you don't just play out the Auctioneer and hesitate like that. But he does agree that it's got to be a Juggler here.
Now with 612 damage available on board, available altogether for JasonZhou to push towards his opponent's face, it's getting to that point where unless another board clear is available for Virtual, Jason might just be able to push this over the edge.
Blessed is the plus attack, right? Oh god, I always keep forgetting.
You said you knew the colors the other day.
I said for the Kazakus potions.
Oh,
I know
right,
them in
sorry.
any language.
Okay.
But this card is a bit newer. Well, so if it is plus attack, that means that 6 plus 6, 12, plus 5 is 17. Still not enough to get over the line. So I'm thinking this is going to be still a Maul turn, but with a Corridor Creeper on the other end of it.
Well, it'd be 19 actually, wouldn't it? Because you can push the 2 from the weapon as
for
well.
sure.
So very close indeed, but probably would end up clearing off the Auctioneer no matter what line of play JasonZhou goes for. So I think I do like this altogether, because you don't really want to be dealing with the whelps to get rid of them as well.
Move quickly.
So what can Virtual actually draw to get him out of this? He has played Spirit Lash, I think. So that obviously Valen Spirit Lash would have been insane here. He's also played Dragonfire Potion, so I'm thinking it's just Psychic Scream left. Anduin doesn't clear everything. Well, okay, with the hero power, Anduin's also really great, but not hitting either of those means that this is just over, Valen healing, not enough.
And this was really nicely done by Jason. Keeping the Divine Spirit right from the get-go just shows he just has great understanding of how the matchup plays out. Getting that Call to Arms early, Divine Favoring, dumping his hand as quickly as he could, and then making sure he got at least some value out of the Divine Spirit, or the Divine Favor, not being too greedy, is a really nice way to get a good middle ground between greedy and aggressive.
Right, and the more that I look at this lineup, it seems clear to me that he was going after Priest, but then I see the Warlock and I'm like, well, not too sure about that.
Yeah, from both of these players, it's almost really hard targeting something, and at the last moment they switch over to it just being a generally decent lineup with fairly good decks throughout. So from both of these players, I do expect this to go through a 3-2 because of the fact that there's no one deck being hard targeted. So there will probably be a lot of back and forth. And for Virtual here, he's still got a good amount of game going into this.
Yeah, he hasn't gotten the win with his own Paladin yet, has he? So, well, I do expect to see a Priest queued up first against a Warlock. Yeah. So, but if he still has that Paladin left, that's really the story of this matchup. Can he get the win against that extremely unfavored matchup?
It is a very unfavored matchup, and as I look at the deck list, I can see it's not even the version...
Oh, sorry, Virtual's Paladin's been banned, so he's got to win...
with his
mirror.
Priest and the mirror, that's right. And looking at the mirror, he probably is favored because he's just got more stuff in his deck. They're still both going with Q blocks as opposed to the N'Zoth variant that we see from some of the players. But with Mountain Giants thrown in there as well, Virtual probably has the ability to just push it over his opponent. But that means that for Virtual, having his own Warlock up against JasonZhou's Priest is a very unfavorable matchup to find yourself in.
Right. So in that regard, would you rather go for the Priest mirror first? It's this eternal question again.
I'm just a play your worst matchup first kind of guy. Just, if you're going to lose, you're going to lose anyway. You may as well just play it. With Virtual going for the mirror to get things going. And with almost identical starting hands.
Did we have some sort of spec bug here?
As I believe both of those cards were actually in his opponent's starting hand as well. But at least with Shadow Reaper for both players, we've got a nice fair game to get things going as the hunt for Raza begins.
Yeah, you love to see that as either a caster or audience member. It's when both of the players have the Anduin or neither of them have it. So again, this might be pretty similar to the Pavel versus Roger game a while ago where it was the Anduin online right away and it's the hunt for Raza that begins. And honestly, this is all just about the best way of drawing your cards. It's a lot of the time it seems straightforward, but once you get to those cleric turns with the circle, you have to be very careful about how much you can draw, maximize your draw without leaving yourself too open to your opponent making you mill.
That's right. I mean, I'm very much a player with this deck who will try and dump your hand as quickly as you possibly can and make sure you're cycling really heavily, always picking nice expensive Kazakh's potions like 5 mana to draw as much as possible. But we saw earlier on Pavel going for 1 mana potions, things like that to make sure he's drawing through his deck nice and quickly while keeping his hand nice and fluid.
Right, so that play from JasonZhou was kind of a dump of hand in terms of playing a Radiant, which could be used, cashed in later for more combo value. I really thought it would have been an Engineer there, but maybe Jason is a bit scared of taking too much damage from a Pyro. It is still a 3-2 minion.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I do entirely agree with that line of play from JasonZhou. The Radiant Elemental can be really good in this matchup, either with the Velen for more damage right at the end, or even just with the Gadgets and Auctioneer to make sure that you're cycling through your deck as quick as possible. But with the pickup of the Zakas for Virtual, he has the perfect play on turn 4 to try and get himself that bit of extra draw. And at this point, pretty much anything he can draw is good, because if it's cheap spells, he can cycle with the Gadgets, and if it's anything bigger, he can hopefully just get the Raza on board.
Right, and I think he picks up the near perfect potion here, because being ahead on board, he can't afford to go for that summon 5/5 aside from the draw. Mm-hmm. And it actually works out really nice here because the spell will deal damage to get rid of not only the Engineer, but...
That's a good point. Wow, this works out perfectly.
Nice trade as well.
I see. Yeah. Good. Okay, so thinking it's worth it to leave an Engineer on board in order to save 1 health on his demon there?
Yeah, that's a little bit weird to me. Maybe it's because he has Potion of Madness in hand and maybe wants to go for an Auctioneer turn later and kind of bait JasonZhou into having at least 1 target for it. But that seems really thinking way far ahead.
That's true. Maybe it means that all of a sudden Loot Hoarder can't be played, something like that. It's worth considering. That I think I agree with you. I would have just gone with the 1 extra damage on my own minion. Maybe it means it's 1 less target for the Cleric in combination with the Circle of Healing. So maybe overall it is worth going for that play.
But one thing's for sure, Virtual is quite ahead in his draw, and he's got the Auctioneer to keep going for it. Not quite this turn, though. This is going to be, I think, a Shadow Vision's turn. Maybe hunt for a Power Word Shield to go with the Gadgets and next turn. Yeah,
that would be very nice indeed. It's kind of annoying because I would really... If I was Virtual, I would love to go with this Auctioneer now if I just had a couple more spells that worked a bit better with it.
One Binding Heal or 1 Power
Yeah, exactly, because it's, if they play Psychic Scream, fine, it's not that bad. Shuffling an Auctioneer back into your deck is fine, because once you draw it, you will draw a whole bunch more cards when you play it.
Right. I do like the preemptive Radiant here, which gives him more room to play Auctioneer with more spells later on.
It means that perhaps he won't have to go for the Holy Smite on the same turn because he doesn't really want to be throwing that down before the Velen comes into play. But if he's drawn a whole bunch of cards and still hasn't found the Raza, then maybe we see that come down in the end.
Unfortunately, there's a pretty easy clear onto this Radiant as well, and it's nice to be able to fit in that Loot Hoarder to deny any potion madness as well.
So now for Virtual, the preemptive play of the Radiant wasn't looking so good, but he does, in the end, just pick up the Raza, which is absolutely perfect.
Yeah, that makes the Gadget Stand not just a card draw engine, but also a machine gun.
Wow, that's pretty good. You just pour in cards and bullets shoot out.
It's really fun to watch certain high APM turns with a Gadget Stand, because the animations on the hero power can take a while. But anyway, Virtual is just so far ahead now. Having Raza way earlier is huge. And he actually, a good spot from him there. He fits in that extra 1 ping, which is not free, but it's not like he would have been doing much with that extra 2 mana anyway. So
exactly. An extra 2 damage, because he realized he would have floated 2 mana if he hadn't gone for that. And now, as you said, he doesn't even really need Velen at this point to be winning the game, because just Auctioneer in combination with Visions for 1,000,000 points of damage going towards his opponent's face. He can be looking to go in for lethal probably around 2-3 turns from now, potentially, especially even sooner if he can find that Velen.
So JasonZhou here realizes he has 1 turn to draw Raza, and that is the next turn. And even then, it might not be enough because he can't really heal back up all that efficiently once Virtual starts going in with the Auctioneer pings.
Yep.
So the gain armor, I'm thinking, is looking pretty appealing, but
really,
it's just a band-aid.
I wonder in that kind of instance if it's worth going for it, because maybe it buys you another turn, but maybe the extra minion pressure you get on board delivers your own lethal 1 turn later, because as you said, you do have to find that Raza as soon as you possibly can.
Great. So this turn, has to start without any hesitation. So what do you like here? Silence first because it costs 0, or Shadow Visions to find has the shield been played?
I think I probably like Visions first. Like, it's always being played this turn, I think, isn't it? And maybe you keep the silence for the Velen if you find that off the top.
Ooh, Mind Blast pickup as well means that he's just extra damage for days and days.
Doesn't even need to save it for Velen necessarily, although maybe he will think it's worth it, as he could instead go for Northshire, Holy Smite, something like that. Just still stupid amounts of damage coming through.
Can just kind of sit back and enjoy the show now. At this kind of point in a Priest game, it feels like a mini game, honestly. It doesn't feel like Hearthstone. It feels like a game where you're meant to hit moving targets.
But that target is still and just lying there as you beat it slowly and slowly more to death. But looking at the last game for Virtual, he does have a respectable game, given that it's a control warlock against a Kazakus priest. As I said earlier today, if you are going to be taking the matchup, you want this pretty much exact deck list to be doing it, because it's got double Mountain Giant in there, which if you can hit on curve is a great way to turn up the pressure. If you can get Cube with Doomguard and Doom Pact, maybe you can just put up enough damage in the mid stages of the game, but you have a very small window in which you can push that damage, or you end up in situations like this where the priest is just firing off stupid amounts of damage and no amount of healing will really counteract that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Warlock has a lot of threats that require super specific answers from the priest. If a giant comes down as early as turn 4, it's only Shadow Word Death, really.
Right, yeah.
And if they miss that, well, smacking the face for 8 every turn really gets out of hand quickly, to the point that even just playing a Doomguard out with the full discard can get the Warlock over the line.
It's true. I very often found myself in playing the version that I do where it's not cube but does have Mountain Giants in, that the extra 8 or 16 damage can't quite get you there, but I imagine with the Doomguards, you're very often going to be just pushing yourself over the finish line before Anduin can come down.
Virtual is like 1 off here, right?
More or less.
If he had played, well, whatever.
What can he possibly do to lose here? It'd have to be like Radiant, Lyra, Unlimited Holy Smite, something like that again to be able to close out the game. We're
gotta
in
mention
situations
that.
like this.
Yeah.
It's
okay,
it's
wait.
meme.
Greater Healing Potion does stall 1 more turn, I think, from what we can see.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
But after that, what goes on?
Still probably dead. I mean, maybe if you can get Greater Healing Potion this turn, Greater Healing Potion next turn again, and Raza at the same time on next turn.
So if he had 1 billion mana, basically.
If he had 1 billion mana and drew 3 cards each turn, then maybe he could stand a chance.
So if you're actually playing Aluneth and you've played, I don't know, you have Twig of the World Tree equipped first, and then get rid of that.
Okay, now my thought of going for the unlimited Holy Smites is sounding a little bit less ridiculous.
Yeah, I've actually found the one way to make that seem plausible.
Right, okay.
Okay, now we're talking. So
that's 7 damage for each one, so that's 14 plus the rest of it. I think this must just be lethal.
And he's got 2 on board as well.
Yeah. You got it?
Yeah.
We at lethal? Awesome.
I'm just going to say yes.
I'm putting you on the spot. I mean, it's as near as makes no difference.
Yeah, he can still play 2 more cards. Yeah, it has to be.
Exactly. And against decks like Warlock, where you can go for things like Mistress and Dark Pact that we may see in the upcoming game, you can possibly come back in situations like this, but with the fairly limited amount of healing that Priest actually has available to it after Priest of the Feast is gone, it's just not available there, and it does mean Virtual will be taking this, bringing it up to 2 games apiece, a 3-2 game to close things out, as we both expected, given both of these players' fairly generic lineups.
And both of them taking a swig of their water and gearing up for what seems to be kind of a momentous matchup. I really like to see that these players that are really actually well known in this region of not only Taiwan but Hong Kong and Macau, as we heard from the announcement a while ago that Virtual has actually placed 2nd in their own regional league, I think, and is well known here, doing well against JasonZhou, who is obviously an internationally well-known player.
Yeah, it would be cool to see these 2 players going up, and even just these 2 decks. While it's not one of the most hotly contested matchups at the moment, because it's fairly unanimously agreed upon that the Priest is the favourite here, it's one of the most important matchups going at the moment. And if you can find that advantage with Warlock, maybe if a specific playstyle or specific tech decision is found later on down the line, it could flip the metagame quite drastically. But for the moment, at least, Virtual has really got his work cut out for him.
Alright, so if you're JasonZhou, what does this tournament actually mean to you as somebody who has been to, how many BlizzCons has it been already?
He's had a very good HCT run, and as he's going to Worlds as well, it's interesting for him because, you were saying earlier on he hasn't had the best year, and it kind of feels like he has it at the GCWC recently, OM, which is now disbanded. We're not doing very well at all. Yeah, they disbanded even just since then. And his play in that tournament was overall pretty good compared to most of the other players, but it wasn't perfect as well. And so while he could have a very strong 18 if he finds success at HCT World Championships, he does have still a fair amount to prove, I would say, to make sure he is tied in amongst the upper echelon of players.
Right, and he can definitely be considered that way if you look at it from his performance within China, because every time you seem to see a big tournament within China or a tournament internationally where Chinese players are invited, JasonZhou is a staple along with Omega Zero, and that just is such a testament to his consistency. And wasn't he known for having just tens of thousands of Control Warrior wins? Sure, he's got quite a bit with other classes as well, so this guy plays a ton of Hearthstone.
Fat lot of good that Control Warrior wins will have for him now.
Goodness.
But as he picks up another Kazakhstan hand to win in his starting hand game, we don't even see what the other card he mulliganed away was. But
at the speed of light, tossed away, you're not a Raza. Oh, you are a Raza.
Oh my god.
Well.
Wow. I mean, well done.
It's not a good day to be Virtual, is it?
Okay, so now we all know that that's a pretty good hand for Jason. We can move on from that now, I think.
Sure.
For Virtual, how is he going to be winning this game now when he's staring down pretty much the absolute nuts in this instance?
Well, he does have that kind of counter play, if you can call it that, of Lackey into Cube, and if the Lackey gets Doomguard, can put out another 2 Doomguards with a Dark Pact. It's kind of the best curve you can hope for outside of Mountain Giant, but honestly, it's just not enough to deal with whatever comes out of this potion. Free hero powers every turn, and it's instant board wipe of anything Doomguard sized.
Yes. I think over the next turn or two, we're going to have to see maybe Skull of the Minari could start to pull this back, because obviously then you can pull the Doomguard out, go for Pact or Cube into Pact, and start pushing really high amounts of damage. But even then, if JasonZhou takes a half-decent Kazakhstan potion to fight back against that. Maybe even going for polymorph if it's presented. He just can't really be losing this.
Yeah, draw 2 is half decent, I would say, or beyond half decent. Maybe quarter and a half. What do you call it? Quarter to... Never mind.
Quarter decent?
Yeah. It's got to be coin lackey, right? The only way he can think of winning... Well, then again, he doesn't see that Raza and Anduin are in hand. But if he has any chance of making it through, it's got to be Doomguard after Doomguard real quick. And the thing is, though, he's already drawn one of them, so it's more likely that you actually get a Void Lord out of this.
I think you're correct. He has to just assume that there's nothing that can mess up his plan, because he has the ability to make all the disgusting things happen in hand. With Prince, Cube, Doomguard, he can make all sorts of absurd stuff happen, even with the Dark Pact thrown in there, to try and push 15, maybe 20 damage in a turn with all these Doomguards. But it's just going to be so difficult to do when the pressure is still there from JasonZhou, and the Shadow Reapers will probably kill off everything that's coming down from Virtual over the next turn or two, whilst also giving him his own win condition right out the gate.
Right. Virtual, from what we can see, of course, can't afford to play around things like Silence or Potion of Madness plus a way to get rid of it.
Absolutely.
He doesn't see that the end is nigh from the hand of JasonZhou, but from his perspective, he still recognizes that Lackey is the best way to deal with this deck, because even if Raza on 5 and Anduin on 8 doesn't happen, even if it takes another 5 or so cards, the best game plan for the Warlock is still to go for cube shenanigans as soon as possible if you don't have the Mountain Giants.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you, and there is the ability to do that, and we can see over the next turn or two, maybe is he going to be cubing the Doomguard if it comes out of the Lackey, maybe cubing the Lackey itself to try and pull out a bunch of Void Lords later on down the line. There's a lot of options actually to consider here.
Well, the Lackey goes into the Kazakhs and then you cube whatever comes out of it, assuming there's no Silence. But yeah, the thing is, it's more likely to pull out a Void Lord here.
Was there any reason to not attack face with the Cleric first there? Because you're not going to be dealing with the Doomguard yet. I think there was slight missequencing there for JasonZhou, but he
can
picks up the Silence
anyway.
in the end.
All right.
Yeah. This does leave him a little bit vulnerable to the potential for Carnivorous Cube just to eat this up, and all of a sudden the Silence doesn't really matter anymore.
The thing is that against Priest, if your opponent is cubing a Void Lord, you don't really mind that much because it's not charging. And
okay, so you think it's too important for Virtual to get the cube on the Doomguard?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that you need multiple of them, especially if you're going for Gul'dan as well, to get that burst at the end.
Okay. I think that's a good way of looking at it, because I was focusing too much on just denying the Silence value with the cube. But I guess that makes it an even better play from JasonZhou to go for the Silence, because he knows that if a cube does come down, fine, it's not hitting a Doomguard.
Right. In some ways, you could care that if you don't Silence, then maybe you get to kill more Void Walkers and dilute whatever comes out of Gul'dan. But from JasonZhou's hand, he doesn't need to care about that because he's got the Anduin.
He's got Raza and Anduin.
Yeah, and he's also got Psychic Scream for even if Gul'dan has a chance to come down.
I think that must pretty much close this out, because without the true like one turn kill potential with Umbra in the deck, you just can't really push forward enough damage in one turn. Even if you're going Doomguard, Cube, Pact, it's only like 15 damage you'll be pushing through altogether.
Only 15. Come on, Priest don't. That's not even a scratch.
That's nothing compared to what Priest can do. An easy 28 damage.
Right, so it's gonna be Death and Glimmerroot here, I guess, into Anduin, into a very quick game. Jason looks super relaxed. If you just even look at his posture, he looks like he's leaned back all the way in his chair, kind of sinking almost even.
I mean, to be honest, if I was Jason, I think I'd be pretty chill in this instance as well. You've just got Kazakhs, Raza, and Anduin on curve. Your hand is blooming 10 cards full. You could not be in a better situation here.
I agree. This is actually just the best.
Yeah. I don't think you couldn't really have sequenced this any better, to be honest. He just needs Velen now to be able to push forward through any amount of healing, and Mind Blast is a good way to get that started, to get that true one-turn kill potential. Now I guess for Virtual, it's kind of just all in on finding the Skull of the Minari as quick as you can, because then that allows him to play the Doomguard with no chance of discarding the Carnivorous Cube or even Prince Tal'Daram to an extent.
A a shame to not see so much from Virtual as the player who is less well known, but that has been most of the story of this tournament. The better known player, the one who's touted as more experienced, has won in, I think, every single game that we've cast so far, except for Tom and Colento, where better known player is, I guess, internationally looking at it, it's Colento, but that's not to discount Tom at any level.
Exactly. He definitely seems to be the local hero in Taiwan here, and it's unsurprising that he is, if anyone was to make it through from the Taiwan, Hong Kong, Macau region, it would definitely be Tom, because he's the local favorite, and he's also shown he's got what it takes, getting the #1 points earning going into HCT in January. But now for Virtual, he has found that Skull of the Minari, which frees up so much mana on the following turns that maybe he can start to make those truly ridiculous plays with the Cube, Doomguard, and Doompact.
Yeah. It just feels way too little too late. Because JasonZhou can be putting out no small amount of damage right here between Mind Blast and Holy Smite and Blue. I don't think it's quite lethal yet, but the only healing in hand for Virtual is 8 points from the Dark Pact. It's just not going to make it.
Trust me.
Well, he's also got another 8 that could come down from the Mistresses if they were to die off on the following turn, which is why he's gone for the Prince Tal'Daram here, which is an interesting line of play, but I suppose given that he has the Cube, Doomguard, and Faceless Manipulator already, he's got a good amount of crazy shenanigans he can make with all the Doomguards.
Okay, so in the complete fantasy world for Virtual here, what's going to happen in the next 2 turns?
Oh, what? So he can... Well, it needs to be something like another Doom Pact so that he can cube Doom Pact or something silly like that, but it just doesn't even really have the mana for stuff like that.
There's nothing realistic that fits within the time frame here, I think. So if it's Lackey and then you pull something to get rid of the Lackey and you get the Doomguard right away. Okay, so this Doomguard is going into Lyra, for sure. Then we cube it, we summon 2 more Doomguards. Sure, we're dealing 10.
That's respectable.
Yeah.
I can agree with that. You kind of wish you still had a Tal'Daram here, but it gained you a good amount of health, I suppose, so you're not too upset about it, all things considered.
And then, if the Gul'dan can bring back, 4 Doomguards that would have died by then, assuming that the ones that come out of this cube had died.
Right.
You have 20. But in every world, these Doomguards are getting Psychic Stream.
Well, I think it's actually only 3 Doomguards altogether, wouldn't it, that would have died at that point instead of 4. So even then, it's only another 15 damage that's being pushed, so it's not even lethal then. But yeah, you're right. Psychic Stream will just be able to come down and completely destroy Virtual's all of Virtual's hopes and dreams.
Yeah, and the healing has run out for Virtual here. So aside from the Blood Reaver, Gul'dan extra armor, this is going to be damage permanence for JasonZhou.
Yeah, and I suppose the hero power from Blood Reaver can kind of do a decent amount to start pulling this back. And there are the Doomguards back in the deck, so they can be pulled from Lackey once again. But it's just still not really going to be there.
Speak to me.
So this is only kind of a lead up into our new competitive structure for 2018, in which there will be a lot more focus on regional tournaments because we have tour stops.
That's right.
And such and such. So it would be great to see all these players that have been highlighted from within this region who have been playing quite well. I should say I liked Virtual's lines in most of these games. Maybe the draws just didn't line up all that perfectly, but this is not the last we'll be seeing from him or from anyone else who has already been locked out.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It would be really cool for these players as well to get some recognition for their play just before the new team structure comes in, as we were mentioning earlier today, as Virtual gives it his absolute best shot to be taking this out. But even now, I think there's just too much healing, damage, and everything JasonZhou could possibly want.
Is this not lethal yet? Wait. Between Thalnos, Mind Blast, Holy Smite, that is 9 and then 6. And then, so you'd only need to play 3 more cards after that. Does it fit? I guess Shadow Visions can steal something as well.
Silence or Circle of Healing, something like that.
Yeah.
At the very least, even if it's not lethal right now, he just needs to make sure he's not dying to Blood Reaver nonsense, I suppose, or second cube into Doom Pact nonsense, which is worth playing around. You could go for the greater healing potion to start pulling it back in your favor, or even just Spirit Lash, things like this that just make sure you're staying out of range of any damage is important to close out this 100% for JasonZhou.
I think it's only lethal if the Shadow Visions pulls a 1 mana playable card or less.
Okay.
And even then, we don't really have enough time. So this is what was mentioned a while ago when you recognize that, yeah, you're not going to have enough time to be able to do this. Then it's just better to make the 100% play, which is survive for now.
Exactly, and I don't think JasonZhou can find himself dying with this line of play. Because once he's killed off the Doom Guard, all of a sudden the amount of damage being pushed through is significantly less, even though this is... Oh wait, this isn't lethal available with Gul'dan.
No, because two of the Doom Guards were shuffled back in, so
right,
I think it'll only be
yeah.
2 coming back this turn, and that's if there's even enough space for them between the Void Lords that also died.
Surprisingly close, would you say, for a Kazakus, Raza, and Anduin on curve game? I mean, it's not.
Okay, sure.
It's not really, but given how it could have gone,
done everything he could.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Gotta give him that.
He has played to his outs. The Tal'Daram play on the Mistress, did you think that was potentially not ambitious enough? Or do you think that was a nice play that bought him the time to go for stuff like this?
I think he just didn't have anything better to do, so I don't mind it at all. So
now 18 damage needing to be dealt. The Mind Blast equals 7, Holy Smite equals 4, which is 11. I think he must be getting very close at the very least with Potion of Madness and stuff like that. He just needs to make sure his quick maths is on point.
Yeah, I think you need to start the turn right now, because if you don't have lethal, what can you be doing this turn as well? Like, Greater Healing doesn't deal with all of this, so there has to be lethal. I've said that many times today.
Yeah, even with going for the Priest of the Feast, you can heal so much anyway.
Wait, does this give Virtual some weird out with Cube and
10, 16. I
Okay,
mean, there's no room on board, but I suppose, well, he can kill off the Void Lords, can't he?
Yeah, you can trade away Void Walkers. Wait, hold up, Daruk.
Was that not surprisingly
is this
close?
Not over? Wait.
I mean, JasonZhou has just run out of time.
I'm sure he has missed.
No, surely not.
Yeah, he had Circle left, so that turn that
Circle was the only
I
card
think it
left.
was exactly lethal at that point.
You reckon? He's back up to he's back up to 29 now. How can he possibly die at this point?
If 3 Doom Guards...
Ooh. Oh, Dark Pact is now 10,
so
16.
Definitely all the Void Walkers go in at this point. You can attack face with the Doom Guards because that's happening every day. So are the Void Lords because you can't kill them off because they remove your space. So given that, how are you dealing the last 15?
So you have... I mean, I can see like 13 potential burst damage because you can go Cube, Dark Pact, and Hero Power, which is delivering a very respectable amount of damage.
Wait, so he's done it. Right?
That's lethal.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. What? No, that cannot possibly have happened.
Derek, am I dreaming here?
So
did we actually reach the fantasy world that we were trying to theorize a while ago?
It's actually happened for Virtual. This is a game that JasonZhou has to look back on, but he's done it. Virtual advances to day 2.
My mind is blown. Did we miscalculate the turn with the Thalnos, right?
We must have done. JasonZhou, that's...
Or